Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery. It's a beautiful but rainy Monday morning, March 25th, 2024. We get together most weekday mornings at this time, 8 o'clock Central, to talk about strategies, tips, techniques, share success stories, and support each of you. Regardless if you are a client or a prospective client, a distribution partner, or a prospective distribution partner, or any combination of those, everyone is welcome. We're very, very transparent, so we don't filter out who can hear what. It's important for everyone to understand the big picture, if you will. So obviously, the whole concept of what we do in summary is to help small businesses become fundable, because once they're fundable, they can get funding. Now, I know a lot of small businesses aren't thinking that. They're just like, no, 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 I just want funding. But you can't just want funding. You need to be fundable, and then you can get funding, right? You have to be fundable first. So with that being said, there's different elements to become fundable, and we've talked about the three C's: credit, collateral, and capacity. We've talked about how the four phases of the model works, but today we're going to drill in on accounts receivable. So if all is going well, my screen is shared, and we're going to talk about, I don't want to say the best kept secret, but we'll just call it a creative, legal, and effective way to create fundable businesses, which is smoothing over accounts receivable to their balance sheet. Now, I'll go through this in a more structured fashion, but in summary, that's what you and I can do to help small businesses become qualified for funding, is we can push over to them legally and ethically assets in the form of accounts receivable that go onto their balance sheet, so now they have collateral. Then we can help them liquidate those receivables. So let's go ahead and get started with some key definitions, because if we're not all clear on what these terms mean, then the rest probably won't make sense. So we have creditors. A creditor is anyone who is owed money. So let's say that you paint houses, and you came and painted my house. You left an invoice for me, and the agreement is I'll pay you within a week. You're the creditor. I owe you money. So you're the creditor. You're owed the money. And in that scenario, I'm the debtor. I'm the person that owes the money to the creditor. So sometimes people read too much into it. They get all emotional. Oh, these terms don't sound comfortable to me. Well, it's what it is, right? So it's important to understand the vocabulary. Creditors are owed money by who? By debtors. Simple enough so far, right? Now we're going to talk about accounts receivable, as I have mentioned before. So this is money owed to the creditor by the debtor. Well, why is it owed? Well, because there was some sort of contract, and we'll look even at an example of a defaulted contract as part of our exercise today. But there is a commitment by the creditor, I'm sorry, a commitment by the debtor to pay the creditor that was broken. So this is big business, just so you know. Buying and selling of debt instruments is sold on a large scale. A lot of times it's defaulted mortgages, defaulted credit card debts, defaulted auto loans from Santander, from Capital One, from Sally Mac, and so forth. Here, you and I are breaking this down on a micro basis, so individual small business owners can leverage this to qualify for funding and to financially profit. So accounts receivable, that's AR means accounts receivable, money owed to the creditor by the debtor. Furthermore, it can be an important asset on the creditor's balance sheet. So that goes back to what I mentioned. You know, the three C's. What's it take to get funding? Credit, collateral, and capacity. When it comes to collateral, I think what you'll see, for those of you who are distribution partners, you'll commonly hear from clients, oh no, I'm not going to qualify for funding because I don't have collateral. I don't have one of the 3 C's. Well, that's okay. They can come to us with no collateral. We'll move legally and ethically assets over onto their balance sheet so they have collateral. It's real, it's ethical. Just, I mean, another example, let's say you own a lot of land, so a parcel of land. Could you transfer it to your brother? Could you transfer ownership, the deed, to your brother? Sure, sure. Let's say you owned a 1996 Chevrolet pickup. Could you transfer the title of that pickup to your sister? Sure, sure. So, can we transfer accounts receivable legally and ethically over to the creditor's balance sheet so now they have collateral for funding? Absolutely. Make sense? Legal, legal, legal. Not a problem. Now, it needs to be done properly, but we do it that way. All right. So then one other key term, one definition I want you to know before we move forward, it's called media. And I know media can mean different things in the broader world, but within this spectrum, media is the specific documentation that substantiates that the money owed to the by the creditor to the debtor is, I guess I got that reversed, owed by the debtor to the creditor. Had that reversed, didn't it? So we'll look at an example of that. So just so you know, if you were a big player and you went to Capital One and said, hey, I want to buy $10 million defaulted credit card accounts, they would probably only transfer to you a spreadsheet. Literally, that's what it would be. You'd get a spreadsheet with, of course, the person's name and address and social security and how much they owed and such. So on a large scale, media is often not provided in the initial transaction because the media is the documentation that takes more work versus a spreadsheet. All right, so we've got 4 terms that we're all clear on now. We have creditors, that's who's owed the money. Debtors, people that owe the money, and they owe the money to the creditor. Accounts receivable is the money that's owed. And media is the substantiating documentation. Everybody good so far? Any questions, comments, concerns? All right, so again, why is this relevant? Why are we having this discussion? Because in our model, we legally, ethically, and maybe even creatively help small businesses become fundable. So you don't game the system, but you can work within the rules. So we transfer accounts receivable, which are assets, over to the clients so they have collateral on their balance sheet. And then if they would like, then we can turn around and liquidate that receivable. And we're going to talk about what that means and exactly how that works in a minute. But that actually blends to our next section. So we provide all clients in the Startup Business Funding Package free accounts receivables to strengthen their balance sheet. So it's included. It's included. And specifically, it's $10,000 that we're transferring over to each. As I mentioned, if the client desires, that they don't have to, but if they want us to, then we can help them liquidate those receivables. Because let's go back to the house painting example. So I hired Joe to paint the house. And Joe painted the house. He left me an invoice. I've not paid him yet. I got 7 days to pay him. So Joe is the creditor. I'm the debtor. Now I'm in compliance, right? It's not late. It's within that 7 days. But there's other ways that we can go out and we can actually buy other people's receivables. So you could go to Joe, and sometimes you hear of this called factoring. You could go to Joe and say, hey, Joe, instead of you waiting for the money, how about I give you the money now, take a slight discount, and then I'm owed the money. So the point is, receivables can be bought and sold. They can be transferred. And so that's what we're doing here. To be able to actually liquidate, so again, we're past the transfer of the AR to the client. Now we're talking about moving it into cash. So we've transferred it over, it's on their balance sheet. Now we're talking about the topic of liquidating. That's our conversation today. You need to be licensed and bonded to do that, and we are. And there are some pitfalls. And we've learned through trial and error that there's certain ways that you can do this and collect money legally and ethically, and there's ways that you can do it wrong and get in trouble. So we understand how to convert the AR into cash. I share this with you because let's say that we transfer the receivables to the client, which we do. It's automatic, it's free, it's part of the program right here. Should the client reach out and try to collect that money, because it's theirs now, right? The money is theirs. Technically not, unless they are licensed and bonded. So we want to avoid clients from getting into a tight position. Now we are licensed and bonded, so we can do that for them. And that's kind of why we're having this discussion today. Also, when we are legally and aggressively collecting money for clients, we keep the creditor out of it, because not everyone's nice, right? When people haven't paid their bills and now we're chasing after them, sometimes they say unkind things, very mean things. And so we want to keep the client out of that messy process, which we do. And then innovatively, the way that we collect the money for our clients from the receivables that we transfer to them for free, or even more receivables if they need, we're able to transfer that cost of collecting the money to the debtor versus the creditor. And I'll just show you, we're going to go through some contractual language and we'll show you how all that is possible and documented. All right, so let's get over here to the process. Now, I emailed this process to you, and in Microsoft Outlook, the formatting looked a heck of a lot better than it does in my notepad. But nonetheless, let's proceed. So our team of paralegals, we've gone through over the past, I guess, 6 months, and we continue to. We've got 4 more days of in-person training in the month of April, in fact. But we are training to be a great resource for our clients in liquidating those receivables. And so I want to show you the process that we follow and then some documentation of that so you understand. So Marilyn has a question. She's confused about the AR process when the client has no money. Well, Marilyn, I don't understand that. So, I mean, when clients come to us through you, through a branch office, through the Opportunity Fund, they're looking for funding to start or grow a business. We're transferring receivables for free to them. And then if they want help liquidating those receivables to put cash in their pockets, I'm now describing how that process works, Marilyn. Okay, so the first thing is, if a client wants us to collect the money that's owed to them, then we have an assignment form. So that form allows us to legally collect that money for the client. And that's industry standard. That's not unusual. That's not unique. So we have that template in our CRM. So when a client says, yep, want you guys to liquidate the receivables and turn it into cash, we send them the form. So not a problem. So that's number one. So that's how it starts. Now, if they have questions, we can talk about it, but that's where it starts. Now, here's what we do to liquidate it. So here's the recipe that we follow. So we're, again, very transparent. I'm even going to show you some of the documentation. So the first thing that we're going to do is send a demand letter to the debtor. So that's the person that owes the money. So this is a real debtor, Alfonso Lott, good man, have nothing negative to say about him, but he breached his contract. So he owes over $10,000. We're going to go through his contract in a minute so you understand how he owes that and why he owes that. So his contract was transferred to one of our clients who needed accounts receivables for collateral. And now we're helping that client liquidate those receivables. So this is a real example, not a hypothetical example. So as mentioned here, so we send a demand letter. Now that demand letter is sent certified mail, return receipt requested, and we send to our client a copy of the tracking number. So they know that it went out. But this is the letter that goes out. And let's look at some of the highlights of the letter. So of course it clarifies that it's a demand notice. It clarifies that we're contacting them for an overdue invoice and a breach contract that they signed. We are hereby attempting to resolve a claim for a breach of contract against you. As a first-party collector of your debt, this communication shall serve as the plaintiff's pre-suit notice. So we're going to be suing them if they don't pay. That's the short answer. Why would we do that? Well, we want them to pay without lawsuit, but if we do need to sue them, we will sue them and collect the money for the client. So this is attempting to prevent us from suing, because if they pay the client, then we don't have to sue them. But this shall serve as the plaintiff's, which is us, pre-suit notice of claim. So when we sue, the client's not involved with the lawsuit. The client doesn't have to go to court or be involved. Keeps their hands clean. And attempt to resolve this matter without the need for litigation or reporting on your credit. So just pretty standard paragraph there. Therefore, this is demand for full performance. So again, understand the nature. We have a client. The client needed receivables to build collateral to qualify for funding. So we transferred a $10,000 instrument, which we're going to go through in just a moment, the actual instrument that was transferred to the client. So now Alfonso Lot owes the client, doesn't owe us anymore. We've transferred, just like we talked about. You can transfer a parcel of land, you can transfer a car title. We transferred receivables. So again, this is a letter that sent certified mail, receipt requested to the debtor, the person that owes. So we clarify it's him. Yes, it's you, Alfonso, that owes the debt. Here's when you signed the debt instrument. And we'll provide them a copy of the debt instrument that they signed, so they can't say, oh no, I don't know what you're talking about. Most cases we have their social, and then we should have their IP address because it was an e-signed contract, and we have a unique reference number, and we can go all the way to the bottom to substantiate that. So here is where that information is coming from. So here's where the reference number came from, and then we can go down and we can see the IP address that it was signed from. So this is good as gold in collecting money, because in this case the creditor, the person that's owed the money, can't say, no, I don't owe it or I didn't sign it. There's no doubt. And we'll provide them the full agreement that they signed, as you can see here. Okay, moving on. So we always want to offer a settlement offer because, and the client, our client has to agree to it, but money in hand is better than fighting for more money later. So we clarify, you failed to participate and pay as promised, therefore we are now demanding payment of the $10,000. So this is the transfer that we talked about that we made to the client, our client, 10,000 of receivables. Well, why is it 10,000? What makes it a $10,000 debt? Well, we go over here. So Alfonso's a great guy. Again, love him as a friend, but he signed up as a branch and then didn't comply. And so within the branch agreement, there is a license fee. And the license fee is, scroll. Oh, license fee is $10,000. So the amount that we're asking Alfonso to pay matches the agreement. Now, actually, most likely, Alfonso in this case actually owes more than 10,000, which is great for the client because we promised them a $10,000 receivable, but I'll show you here in a minute why most likely the debt that Alfonso owes the client is actually much greater than that. So for Alfonso just to settle for 10,000 or whatever is negotiated is much better because Alfonso is going to be responsible for the collection costs, the legal costs, and most likely the principal amount's going to go up, which I can show you in a minute in the agreement. So in our standard demand letter, we ask for let's pull back up here. We ask the creditor, the debtor, the person that owes the money, owes the debt. We ask the debtor to pay a small amount to stop the process of filing the lawsuit. So that way we can resolve the rest. If they're not willing to pay at least, what would this be, $200, then either they're broke or they're just not willing to try to negotiate and resolve this out of court. So that's the standard ask, is for the debtor to pay $200 so we can at least start to get money back into the client's pocket. Because remember, again, what we're talking about is our AR process of collecting money for clients. So what we're doing here is we're talking about the demand letter. We're going through it. And then we clarify that if they don't pay, that they're going to owe the $10,000 plus $50 per day late fees. Well, how in the world can we hold them responsible for that? Now, our clients love the fact that there's $50 a day late fees because that grows the amount of money that's owed to them. But where does that come from? Again, everything that is asked and litigated for has to be substantiated in the contract. So if we went through this in detail, and I don't know how much detail you want to go through this, but all the request for money from the defaulted person, the person that owes the money, is documented. So with that being said, and we let them know it's not going to go away. So we send the demand letter, and often we'll send it via email, but that's not quite as official as we'll send it certified mail, return receipt requested. The email will copy the client. Because again, remember, there's always a client behind the scenes, right? A client owns the accounts receivable. Our client is owed the 10,000, and we're showing you how we liquidate, how we collect that. All right, so let's go on down the process then. So hopefully, based upon receiving the demand letter, the debtor says, oh goodness, this is serious, and makes either a settlement offer, a payment, or sets up payment arrangements. So that gets money into the client's pocket, right? So now the client is liquidating their accounts receivable. Right? We're liquidating the accounts receivable, which means cash going into the client's pocket, right? Big picture. We've got to make sure we understand why we're doing this. We're not doing this to be mean. We're simply enforcing a breached contract to get clients' money. We good so far? All right, so back to the process. So that may work, that may not work. If they don't pay, then we'll actually have our paralegals draft up the document that's going to be filed with the court. Then and I don't have an example of that pulled up, but I could, but I guess it's irrelevant. But it's actually the lawsuit, if you will. So then we would send that to the debtor and give them one more chance of saying, so again, Alfonso in this case is the debtor. They owe money to our client. So this is the debtor. We give them one more chance. Hey, here is the actual lawsuit we're going to file. This is it. please pay, please make payment arrangements. Because what's the goal? The goal isn't to sue anyone, but it's to collect the money for the clients that's owed. Now, if the debtor still doesn't pay, we're going to file the lawsuit. And really, we have an obligation to do so. We can't just make the threat to sue them without the follow through. So let's pause there. Questions, comments, concerns. Do we all understand the big picture? So we're talking about liquidating receivables. Why is that relevant? Because receivables are assets that are collateral on the balance sheet, but the client doesn't have to just keep receivables. They can seek to liquidate those receivables and turn it into cash. And we're showing you how our liquidation process works. Anyone have questions so far? Okay, we're almost done. So hopefully we don't get to the point of ever having to file a lawsuit, because we don't want to sue people. We just want our clients to be paid what they're owed. Now, this formatting makes it horrible to follow, but the bottom line is once the lawsuit is filed, now we use legal and aggressive discovery techniques. So this is ways to get more information from the debtor that can help us with the lawsuit, but also it takes time and energy from the debtor, often over 80 hours for each lawsuit for them to do these things. They probably don't want to do that. Well, what are examples of aggressive discovery techniques? We can have depositions, we can have requests for productions, we can subpoena bank records, tax returns, cell phone records, emails, so forth. We can request mental and or physical examinations. We can have interrogatories, requests for admission, and requests for inspections. We could go to Alfonso's office and go inspect it by court order, for example. Now, so in general, the person that's being sued, this is inconvenient. They owe the money, right? This isn't some strong arm tactic. They clearly owe our client money. They've clearly signed this agreement. Here they provided their information. Here they signed it. And here's the electronic proof of it. So there's just absolutely no question that the debt is owed. This is a way to strengthen our case if we need. Now, what can happen is that when we're going through discovery, we might find that our client is owed more money. What does that mean? So let's go up to one section specifically. And there's a number of provisions that help our clients collect money, such as the confession of judgment. If you're not familiar with this contractual provision, it's very helpful in getting a slam dunk in the court. But that's not what I wanted to share with you. I wanted to share with you some ways in which our client, your or my client, could actually get more money than just the $10,000. So section 8.5. So Alfonso Lott also agreed for non-competition. So he said that he will not directly or indirectly through any businesses perform any services or anything that's similar to what he signed up to do with us. So when we go through the discovery, we may find, he's actually been doing some similar services. And then we could find out how much he made from that. And that could dramatically increase the amount of money that's owed to our client. So while the $10,000 is the base amount owed to the client, based upon that clear statement, it could be that the client is actually able to receive much more. Now, as we close this out, as we go through it, and again, hopefully it never goes to court. The goal isn't to go to court. The goal is just simply to get the money that's owed to the client, right? That's what we're trying to do. Liquidate the AR. Don't want to make anyone mad. We don't want to be mean. Don't want to be ugly. We just want the money to the client. Money to the client. Money to the client. So liquidating their AR. An important note, as we're going through this and start requesting all of this, you can imagine some people are hesitant. They're like, wait, I don't want to give you my bank records. Alfonso, let's go back up to we'll go to the demand letter. Alfonso might say, hell no, I'm not going to provide you my bank records. Hell no, I'm not going to provide you my cell phone records. Well, then what do? We file a motion for contempt with the court. And when we file a motion for contempt, if the court agrees to that, then sanctions can be placed against, in this case, Alfonso Lott, the debtor. And that could include 72 hours of jail time. So while you don't go to prison or you don't go to jail for owing money, you certainly can go to jail for not complying with court orders. So you can see why this is incredibly important. A lot of people think, oh, if I'm going to sue someone, it's just suing and then going to court. Well, we never want to go to court. We want to resolve the obligation for our client, but it's through this that this often can happen. Ultimately, if they still don't pay, then we can go to trial. We're going to almost always win because, how would Alfonso say, no, I don't owe 10,000? I mean, what in the world is Alfonso going to say that, no, I didn't make these commitments. I didn't sign up. So the end result is Alfonso owes it, and we're going to get the money for the client. Once we win the trial, then we can get a judgment. With judgments, depending upon other specifics, we can garnish wages or seize assets. Just as well, look, today, if you're listening to this recording live, former President Donald J. Trump lost a lawsuit, and he owes over $400 million that's due today. And it appears he may not have that. I'm not political, so I don't have any political connections, but they'll start liquidating. Essentially, that's what this is here. Okay, so with that being said, what's the goal? Let's wrap it up. You and I, if we're distribution partners, we help small businesses become fundable. Well, what does this all have to do with becoming fundable? Well, what it has to do with becoming fundable is that we are building the 3 C's: credit, collateral, and capacity. All participants in the funding program for free receive $10,000 of free accounts receivables. I'm showing you a real, current, tangible example of what that looks like and how we go through to collect that money. Who has questions, comments, concerns? Because again, if you step back and you look at the big picture, you'd say, wow, this is very innovative. We have legal and ethical ways to put assets on clients' balance sheets so they qualify for funding because now they have collateral that they didn't before. And even more than that, they don't just have to have the AR on their balance sheet. We can literally help them liquidate the accounts receivable and turn it into cash in their pocket. Because Marilyn was asking earlier, what is she going to do with her clients that are broke? Well, let's liquidate their accounts receivable so they have money in their pocket, right? Because Marilyn, every client you enroll receives the 10,000 for free, and if they need more collateral, we can transfer as much as they need. The largest transfer that we've done is to a big law firm that bought accounts receivables from us, and they bought $3 million. So that's the largest transaction. We've got a number of conversations that are bigger, but just for factual stating, the largest AR transfer we've done to date was $3 million, but that was to a large law firm because they like this process. It's legal, it's ethical, it's effective. All right, Jerry's asking an interesting question, and he really sees the money sign. So you're right. So if we're providing clients free $10,000 of AR, and then we're converting that into cash, this is another way for them to generate income, right? Rather than playing the stock market, rather than buying Bitcoin, buying real estate, those are all options. Clients could essentially see that this accounts receivable, which we give them for free, is actually a way to make money, as well as a way to qualify for funding by having collateral. All right, Brian asked, how long does the process take? Well, you got to remember, and I'm glad you asked that question, what is liquidation? In this exact case, we have a client, I'm not mentioning the client's name, but the client owns this contract. So Alfonso Lot owes that client. So what is liquidation to the client? Alfonso Lot paying, right? Alfonso Lot owes it. There's no question. Alfonso Lot owes it. And so liquidation, it means Alfonso Lot is paying it. Well, how long? So in other words, Brian's asking, how long is it going to take for Alfonso to pay? Well, you probably have to ask Alfonso, Brian, not me, because Alfonso is the one that's paying, right? Now, we could do some things like put it on QuickBooks and factor it, and through QuickBooks factoring, we can factor 97 cents on the dollar, but separate from accelerating the collection of the money in terms of the true debt liquidation. I've shown you, Brian, honestly and thoroughly, the process we go through. The question becomes, what is the trigger that motivates Alfonso Lot or whomever it is that owes the money to pay? Well, it can vary by person. In some cases, they get the demand letter and they're like, oh shit, I went out of this, and they pay, or they make payment arrangements, or they make a settlement. That doesn't work for some people. So that's why I wanted to show you in detail, Brian, the steps that we go through, because no one knows at the outset what the trigger is going to be for Alfonso to pay. We have a very, very, very high probability that he'll pay. Worst case scenario, it's down here. Now, what's interesting is that the debt to Alfonso, whoever owes the money, grows as time goes by, because we have $50 a day late fees that are building and building and building. And the way that we structure it, there's no cap on that. Let's say it takes 6 months to go through the court process. It shouldn't, but that's 180 days. 180 days at $50 a day is that, let's do the math on that. I should be able to do that in my head. Let's go through that. So let's say that the debtor, so my calculator decides to start working, and then of course I get a advertisement. Okay, so we have 180 days times $50 a day. That's what I was thinking, 9,000. So there's 9,000 in late fees that is now contractually owed on top of the initial 10,000. So I understand, Brian, fast liquidation's what everyone wants, but the balance to that is the longer that it takes, the more money there is to collect. And then I also shared with you, Brian, as we go through the discovery process, we may very well find that there's other breaches that has caused additional amounts owed. And if there's additional amounts owed by the debtor, such as we talked about 8.5 up here, that amount may grow to over $100,000 owed. So sure, everyone wants to liquidate fast. Of course, I'm with you there. But the bottom line is, even if it doesn't liquidate fast, there's some equity to it in terms the client is getting more and more and more. All right, so anyone else have questions, comments, concerns? Our goal today was to train our branch CEOs to better understand how we help their clients liquidate their accounts receivable, if they want. They don't have to, if they want. We talked about some key terms to make sure we understand the vocabulary. We talked about why this is relevant, and we went through quite candidly the process. We even showed you the demand letter that we use that send out certified mail return receipt requested. We showed you the original media that substantiates it. What am I missing? What does anyone need to know before we end today's training? All right, Jose's asking, so when he has a client that wants to do this, they just let us know. We normally should be servicing clients where once a week we're having a scheduled call with them anyway. But even sooner, if they want, they can let us know. And what do we need to do? We need to do number one, get the assignment form from them. That's what triggers us to be able to do these things. We can't do these things without the assignment form. This program, this process is set up to be legal, ethical, and effective. And to the best of my knowledge, it's 100% legal, 100% effective. Tim asked an interesting question. Can the client sell the debt to liquidate faster? So yes, so there's a couple ways to Tim's question that the AR can be liquidated quicker. Now, when we say quicker, we don't know. We don't know. And Jenny's asked the question, and Brian's asked the question, how long until Alfonso pays? Well, Jenny, you'd have to ask him, right? You can't ask me when he's going to pay this debt. I do believe he'll pay it willingly or unwillingly through this process, but I don't know, Jenny. I don't know when he will pay, right? So if you owed money, how long would it take you to pay, Jenny? I mean, no one knows, but there's other ways. So we talked briefly about we can do factoring. We can factor, and the factoring receives 97 cents on the dollar. So the client would get 9,700. They wouldn't get the full 10,000, but that would come to them normally in 1 to 2, no more than 3 business days. So that's one option. Tim asked about selling the debt. Absolutely. This AR is an asset owned by the client. And so could the client sell the accounts receivable rather than collect it? Absolutely. It's theirs. Absolutely. All right. Mike's asking about the demand letter. We use a standard demand letter regardless of the state. Now, of course, the client's address would change, but it's a standard. This is the demand letter that we send out. And it's good enough, right? It states who owes the money, why they owe it, how much they owe it. And essentially, we're trying to get an initial payment from them to stop the process and then work the rest out. We don't want to have a long discussion. If they're not willing to at least make a small payment, then we're not going to discuss it. We're going to move forward and we're going to file the lawsuit. We don't want to do that, but there's got to be some willingness to pay, because we're getting money for the client, right? The client is owed the money, and we're working to get the money to the client. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Hopefully this was helpful in better understanding how we liquidate AR. And if you have current clients, we could be leveraging this. And I don't know that this is like some sales part of the sales presentation when you're talking to prospective new clients, but it's good information for you to know. All right. One last question before we go. Terry asked, can people just come in and buy AR? Yes, almost on an everyday basis, including over the weekend. We have people come to us and they just buy receivables. They're not involved in the program. They just buy receivables. Well, why would someone buy receivables? They're buying them for pennies on the dollar. We turn around and liquidate them, and they make big profits. It's just like, why would you want to flip real estate? Why would you want to flip stocks? You buy an asset at a low price, and you anticipate turning that around to a financial gain. So that's not the core of what we do, but yes, we do that on a regular basis, including 3 deals over the weekend. All right, thanks everyone. We'll see you back tomorrow morning. Let us know what we can do to help you. Bye-bye.